All right, Matt, let's jump in. The Property Investors Federation, of course, supports property investors. But do you agree there must be fair and balanced tenancy laws? Because the reality is many tenants do struggle.
Yes, Leah, we do think there should be fair and balanced tenancy laws, and there should be, as much as possible, equity between the two partners, fair contracting. We do, however, think that landlords are often seen as someone who should be picked on. The sort of wording that's used around property investors as greedy landlords, and they're portrayed as bad, evil people who are trying to rip off tenants, when actually that's not the case. They tend to be people like you and I who are trying to save a bit of money for retirement or help their families out longer term. And they've made an investment, and the vast majority of property investors, landlords, own one or two or possibly three homes. So they're just ordinary people, and they're just trying to get ahead like anyone else.
Matt, can we just go through, what the Greens' open letter to the government is stating or wanting? What they say that if the government follows this, it would fix the renting problems in this country. So the first one is a call to limit rent increases. But we can only put them up once a year as it is, and you've got to give 60 days advance notice. I mean, what would you say to that if we were told we cannot put the rent up?
I think something like that would actually be disastrous for the rental market in New Zealand, and you'd actually end up with people leaving, people selling up, and a reduction in the number of properties available for rent. Now, some people would say, well, that's fine because first home buyers will buy these houses and go on the market. But actually, the people who rent are at all stages of life. They may be someone who would like to be a first home buyer. They could be someone who's temporarily in the country for a year. They could be someone who's looking to rent long term, or they've recently moved to a new town, or whatever. There's various circumstances. So any reduction in the number of rental properties is not a good thing. And the other reason for that is that the main determinant of the size of rents is supply and demand. So if you reduce the number of houses available, of rental properties available, then, I'm afraid that market of renters, which will be the same size, will be facing increased rents. So it's one of those cases where it sounds like a lovely idea to limit rent increases, but actually it would have a perverse outcome. And just one other thing, Leah, on this, we think that the 12-month restriction is it's something we would like changed to 6 monthly. And the reason for that is, in particular for landlords who rent in student towns, where they will have a fixed-term tenancy, but they want to be able to change those tenancies more frequently. Having a 12-month restriction on putting the rent up actually means there's less flexibility for those landlords to do that.
Okay, that's interesting. Another one on the list to the government was ensure that every single home is warm and dry through a rental warrant of fitness. Now, we already have the Healthy Homes standard.
Exactly.
So I'm not quite sure what a warrant of fitness would mean.
You and me both on that one. Indeed, we do have the Healthy Home standard. That in itself is a little bit perverse, because if you own your own home, you're not subject to the Healthy Home standard. So if you live in your home, it can be whatever, and then if you rent it out, it suddenly has to be changed. But that's by the by. I think the biggest problem with having these rental warrants of fitness is that you are going to create additional cost and bureaucracy. And if you look at the Greens policy paper on this, they're talking about a cost of around $200 each time you have your warrant of fitness renewed, which they're talking about doing every time the tenancy changes. So, again, interestingly, using the student example, if you might change your tenancy each year, you're going to be up for these once a year. And whereas if you're someone who has a tenant in there for 10 years, then maybe it happens once. So, again, is that achieving the outcome that you want? Probably not. Is it creating more bureaucracy? Yes. Is it creating more cost? Yes. Who pays for that cost in the end?
The tenants,
either
normally.
The tenant pays, or the property investor, the landlord says, well, it's too much for me, I'm getting out of this. We're back in that problem of not having enough rentals.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with you on this. I mean, gosh, 200 each time if you changed tenants as well. They also want landlords to be registered. So much bureaucracy and paperwork, and introduce regulation for property managers so there is a genuine oversight and accountability. Now, Matt, I might be wrong here, but I'm sure, because at the moment we've got nearly a third of Kiwi households live in rental accommodation, and around half of these residential rental properties are looked after by property managers. But as far as I know, property managers don't have to be, there is no there's a law surrounding them, but I might agree with them that they might need them to be registered. The property managers should be held accountable.
Now, yes. And actually, interestingly, the law that was put up by the previous government and quashed by the coalition, we actually supported that with some amendments. So under that law, rental property managers would have had some oversight and, required sort of certain levels of expertise. And that's quite important because, in particular, they are handling other people's money. So, if they're paying rent monthly, say, but they're getting it weekly, they could be building up significant sums of money, and there have been cases where this has gone wrong in the past. So there should be a framework around that. We completely agree with that. What we didn't agree with in the bill was that self-managing landlords were going to be covered by that as well. We think there's a role for education of self-managing landlords, and we have a rent skills course, just to put in a little plug for that, which helps landlords to bring your skills up. And it's really important because the legislation's pretty tricky. If you fall foul of it, it can be quite difficult. So yes, actually, there you go. We agree with the Greens that there should be the regulation with property managers. Requiring landlords to be registered? I think that is something they don't even understand the complexity of. And again, what purpose does it serve? I really don't see how that is of a benefit to renters. Again, more cost, more bureaucracy, a database that can be leaked. It's too complex.